Across the West, the countryside is undergoing a revolution. Thousands of hectares of land not cultivated for years are being ploughed up. It's the result of a steep rise in food prices caused by a world food shortage.
We've suddenly got a situation where a farmer can actually earn a good living by farming his land and producing food that will hopefully feed the world.
Europe is also fueling this agricultural intensification. It's directed that land set aside or returned to nature during 2 decades of food surpluses can now come back into production. As a result, precious wildlife habitat is lost.
We've got to have a balance between food security and environmental protection, but at the moment we're not getting that balance right.
And at the same time, the system of green grants used to encourage farmers to protect the countryside has been radically reorganised, sparking widespread fears for the future of our environment.
Huge sums of public money are put into saving great art treasures for the nation. Well, that remains of our wildlife meadows. What are we doing about those? Are we going to let them go?
Tonight, West Eye View investigates the biggest upheaval in the countryside for decades and asks what price the environment. Our landscape is largely man-made. Landowners are paid green grants to manage it. The Environmentally Sensitive Area Scheme, for instance, has helped protect the Somerset levels for the past 21 years. This and other schemes like countryside stewardship have covered 5 million hectares of land across England. These grants are now being replaced by a new environmental stewardship scheme. The South West is getting £85 million.
We have an entry-level scheme which is open to everybody, and that provides a basic level of environmental land management, including hedges and ditches. Then we also have an organic entry-level scheme, and then the higher level scheme, and that rewards farmers for a very sort of specialised level of land management. For example, in the Cotswolds, managing chalk grassland for species like small blue butterflies.
In Wiltshire, David Shepherd has put the whole of Baltic Farm near Devizes into the higher level scheme. In the West, this gives qualifying farmers an average annual payment of £23,000. Baltic Farm could apply for the higher level scheme because it's located in one of Natural England's target areas, the North Wessex Downs, and contains features considered priorities for protection, like its 6 scheduled ancient monuments.
We've got tumuli that are of significant historical importance. They're going to be, we're going to grass the area down around them, and it's going to be opened up for public access, so people can have the opportunity to look at them and see what's there.
Baltic Farm also boasts another key Natural England conservation priority: rare farmland birds such as tree sparrows, corn buntings, skylarks and lapwings. The grant will provide them with feeding areas, nest boxes and winter cover.
The lapwing have declined by about 40 to 50% in the last 30 years for a number of reasons. So what we've tried to do is create the ideal conditions. So David cultivates the area but doesn't actually sow a crop. So you're left with a sort of open valley, and it's ideal nesting conditions for the lapwing to raise their chicks.
A short distance away, however, an 8,000-hectare patchwork of small farms falls outside Natural England's target area. As a result, Wiltshire Wildlife Trust fears its plans to help wildlife withstand climate change are unlikely to get off the ground on these farms.
If you'd been here, I don't know, 100 years ago, the whole of the grassland in England would have been full of flowers, and now 97% of that is gone. There's very little left, and this is one of the strongholds. I can see 2 things going on here. One is the bits that can be intensified and ploughed up will be, because the grain prices are so high. And a lot of the other stuff, it needs management. It needs to be grazed, it needs to be cut, hedges need to be managed. I can see it all falling into abandonment or pony paddocks and not actually being part of a living agricultural system anymore. And that means the flowers and the bats and the song thrushes and things will slowly disappear.
Mark Humphrey is an enthusiastic conservationist, but he doesn't live in a target area either. He's devoted 14 years to environmental improvement at Manor Farm in Isle Abbots. Thanks to the old countryside stewardship grant, he reinstated ponds, traditional orchards, created wildflower margins around his fields and opened areas for public access. These schemes have ended, and under the new environmental stewardship system, this farm only qualifies for the basic lower level scheme.
Some of the grass margins will be ploughed out this autumn because we don't feel we can actually justify leaving the entire amount down when we're not actually getting economic reward from it. And the access has all come to an end, and some of that will actually disappear now, and the public will just have to walk on the footpaths that the existing national footpath network. Part of the ethos of this farm will disappear. It's a great pity.
These are by no means isolated cases. Some conservationists fear huge tracts of countryside will lose the protection they've enjoyed for years.
There are 1,870 agri-environment schemes running on land that doesn't have a special designation like a site of special scientific interest. That's really under threat and at risk by 2012. And to put that into context, that's an area of around about 99,000 hectares, which is the size of Bristol, coming out of conservation land payments. And that will have a major impact on wildlife, on people, and on the environment in general.
Across Somerset, environmentalists claim 2,000 wildlife sites will no longer qualify for effective support, like this one, which has been receiving countryside stewardship money.
This is Yarley Fields Nature Reserve. It's a really important local wildlife site with bee orchids, with brown hair street butterfly. It's about 5.3 hectares. At the moment it receives funding under the Countryside Stewardship Scheme, but by 2012 it's very likely that we won't receive any funding for this particular area. Now it's a small site, but it's a very important site, populating the countryside around it with really important UK species. It really will. It'll have a major impact on the environment.
Natural England says many county wildlife sites do fall into target areas and will get multiple benefits, and that it will take a flexible approach to proposals from outside target areas. A major criticism of the new scheme is that the lion's share of the money goes to the entry-level scheme. Of the £85 million, just £7 million will go to the higher-level scheme.
The biggest problem is the entry-level scheme is open to everybody. It's a demand-led scheme, and it doesn't have the right level of requirements to really deliver value for money to the taxpayer at the end of the day. And what's left after the entry-level scheme has all been taken up is then the budget that's available for higher level. And the higher level schemes are fantastic. They really do deliver good environmental benefits, but there just isn't enough money in the system to pay farmers to take on really those kind of practices.
I mean, I don't think that's entirely true. I mean, I think the entry-level scheme has given us, quite a lot of benefits. For example, hedgerows and ditches and those sorts of management. I mean, what's worth saying, though, is that scheme has been reviewed as part of a general review of agri-environment schemes over the last few months. And I think a recognition is that there will be some aspects of it which will change in order to provide more benefits.
But there are over 200 tweaks and alterations proposed, and many farmers say it's ludicrously complicated and are being put off applying even for the low-level scheme by the sheer bureaucracy.
I mean, bureaucracy is something that does concern us, in that clearly we want to maximise the amount of funds that are going to the natural environment through land managers. So, I mean, we have been looking very carefully at the way in which those things are administered and putting in place various sorts of action to try and minimise that.
The National Farmers Union sees the new grant scheme as a step back into the past.
25 years ago, not 500 yards from where we are now, farmers and conservationists were at war with each other over the designation of West Sedgemoor as a site of special scientific interest. Now we've come a huge way since then. We've got all sorts of environmental gains being achieved out here. You've got peace reigning between all of the various interest groups, and the danger is that all of that will be chucked away and we'll be left with this one-size-fits-all environmental scheme that probably won't do much harm, but it'll do much less good than the ESA scheme that we've got.
Already there are signs that farmers are thinking twice about opting for environment schemes at all. Only a third of those coming out of old schemes are applying for the new ones.
We're a business and we're in the business of growing food, and if it's not economic to grow food, we'll look at environmental schemes, but if the environmental schemes aren't economic, we'll look at growing food.
After the break, thousands of acres of set-aside land comes back into production with potentially devastating consequences for wildlife.